My live will be, my topic this evening will be about Qatar's role and Al Jazeera. I'll try to go briefly about what I think about Al Jazeera's role, of course, as one of Qatar's tools in relation to the Palestinian cause. Just to explain to you how complex is the situation here, and the unfortunate luck of us to have so many players who are trying one way or another either to sabotage Palestinian cause or to use it as one of bargaining cards in their hands, not in favor of Palestinians, but to serve them or their own interests. Hello, Judith. Thank you. So I'll start now. Okay. So good evening. I'm speaking from my town, Beit Omar, to the north of Al Khalil city, Hebron, in occupied West Bank. And for those who do not know me, my name is Younes Arar. I'll be talking about Qatar. I'll be talking about Al Jazeera and their role either in using our cause or sabotaging it. So, Qatar is a small Arab country, one of the Gulf countries, and it has been not liberated because they did not have a revolution to be liberated from the British occupation at that time, but had their independent, let's say, in the early 70s. And it was a poor country until gas was discovered in that country, and it has become one of the richest countries in the Middle East and even in the whole world. And it is one of the main sources of gas to Europe, among other countries in Asia, but mainly to Europe. And in 1994, of course, Qatar's population is, until now, very small population. The indigenous people of Qatar, more or less 500,000 or 600,000 people, with a huge income, and that's their money. That's fair enough. We don't have any problem with that. And it has, since it has become super rich country, they started to look or to become one of the main players in the Middle East. And to serve this goal, first, they have created one of the most influential media channel, satellite channel, that is Al Jazeera. And they have invited two American military bases inside Qatar, the biggest American military base in the Middle East, and it has the biggest headquarters for CIA in the Middle East. One way or another, now Qatar is an American colony, literally. And they do cover all the expenses from A to Z of the two military bases, the American military bases in Qatar, in addition to the salaries paid for those staying in these two military bases. Al Jazeera when it has started in 1994. Of course, it was opened, or one of the guests of honor to the opening of Al Jazeera was Shimon Peres, one of the Zionist occupation war criminals, and who has become also one of Zionist prime ministers as well. Now, Al Jazeera, when it has started with it has started using a slogan that's not familiar within the Arab world. That's the opinion and the other opinion, or the other side's opinion. That's a sign of the free speech. To attract Arabs' attention to this newly opened channel. And for Arabs to have such a satellite channel with a free speech, it was an achievement. Because all Arab media at that time, until now actually, most of it until now, is controlled one way or another, or directed media, one way or another to serve its own country's interests or the regime's interests. Al Jazeera has started to open the very controversial stories in every and each Arab country, and have created a lot of enemies across the Middle East, because they were criticizing, not just criticizing, but digging for very harmful stories inside each and every Arab country. That's why Al Jazeera started at that time to gain very much popularity, because finally people had a new Arab platform where they can express themselves freely. In addition, that Al Jazeera has opened its doors wide for so-called Arab opposition to express their feelings, ideas, and most of this opposition was based in the West mainly. Anyways, in addition to that, Al Jazeera has started to destroy Arab symbols, images, such as, let's say, Jamal Abdel Nasser. Jamal Abdel Nasser, he's an Egyptian president, and he died a long time ago, but he still had great popularity because he's the one Arab leader who tried to unify Arab nation. And when he died, his funeral was the biggest in the history of mankind, and he's still so popular. But Al Jazeera tried to sabotage his image in Arabs' imagination and in Arabs' beliefs, which has, by faking stories about Jamal Abdel Nasser. I'm saying that was, for example, not only Jamal Abdel Nasser. They have attacked over and over Yasser Arafat when he was alive, and they tried to get people to fake stories about Yasser Arafat. They started to create a new history that is related one way or another to the international movement of Muslim Brotherhood, because Qatar, as a government, as a state, have adopted the Muslim Brotherhood International to become their card to use in the Middle East, and their turn has come many years later. But since early 90s, they have adopted the Muslim Brotherhood movement, and they have funded it with all its powers, and it has opened opened tens of media outlets run by the Muslim Brotherhood to influence Arab nations. And always the winning horse for every country in the Middle East or every organization to become popular is to use the Palestinian cause. So Al Jazeera, since it started using the Palestinian cause. So they were covering all news that are related to Palestine second by second. And therefore it has become the most watched Arab channel in the Middle East and the Muslim world, and even in the West. And they have used the Palestinian cause only to gain popularity. Let's say, for example, now, the only satellite channel that has the very exclusive news about Palestine, about Palestinian resistance, about everything, only Al Jazeera. And it has been given this margin by the Americans who are running this war now and by the Zionist occupation entity to gain even more popularity and to make the whole world waiting for any statement made through Al Jazeera. So Al Jazeera is gaining huge popularity and is making hells of money at the same time. What's the need of this huge popularity? To direct this, number one, to influence people's conscience, to influence people's political directions and views, and also to intervene in other countries in the region policies. And I'll tell you how now. Now, Qatar, as I said from the beginning, it has the biggest two American military bases in the Middle East. And it was the first Arab country to have American military bases. And it is 100% paid for by the Qatari money. And to become, when the war against Iraq started, these American bases were used by the American warplanes to attack Iraq. They were taking off from Qatar to attack Iraq. While at the meantime, Al Jazeera was covering second to second the war, the American war or the NATO's war against Iraq. And again, it was in favor of Iraq. While, try to imagine that, try to understand that. Al Jazeera was covering what's happening in Iraq and was in favor of Iraq, while the American warplanes were taking off from Qatar, where Al Jazeera is based, to attack Iraq. Not only that. Now back to the popularity. To influence the Arab nation through its popularity. When the war against Syria started, Qatar has funded at least 70% of the war expenses against Iraq. It has funded all terrorist groups entered to Syria. Of course, under the supervision of America, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, but it was the main funder. And this is revealed by the ex-Qatari Prime Minister, Jassim bin Hamad. And Qatar has funded the war against Libya. And a lot of documents has been uncovered recently about this war. Why? Because Qatar wanted at that time to win having the World Cup in Qatar, so they needed the French support. That's why they covered all the French expenses, war expenses against, for example, Libya, and given Sarkozy $300 million. And in return, France has supported Qatar to invite the World Cup, for example. And it wanted part of the share of the Libyan oil and gas as well. As for Syria, they wanted to extend a pipeline, a gas pipeline from Qatar to Europe through Syria to enable Europe to get rid of the Russian gas and rely on Qatari gas. But of course, it did not work because the Syria regime did not fall, and it has got the support of the Russians. As well as Qatar has funded most of the terrorist groups attacked Iraq. Again, under the supervision and direction of the Americans and the biggest powers in Europe. Same goes for terrorist groups in Egypt, Sinai. So Qatar has supported, the Muslim Brotherhood has supported, fully supported, funding and media, the so-called Arab Spring. All the funds were from Qatar, and Al Jazeera was working day and night to support this so-called Arab Spring, which actually was the darkest era in Arab's history. And all these wars that were supported by Qatar and used Al Jazeera as a media to influence the Arabs' public opinion was all made to serve their masters. As I said, Qatar is an American colony. And no matter what Al Jazeera does, for example, back-to-back covering what's happening in Palestine and promoting the Palestinian narrative all the time, just not because they are deeply in love with Palestinians. I mean, I'm not talking about the correspondents, I'm not talking about the reporters, I'm talking about those who are making the policies of Al Jazeera. They are doing that one way or another to serve their masters in the White House. Again, Qatar is an American air base. Qatar is an American colony. And all its money, most of its money, is used to weaken Arab countries, such as what has happened in Syria, in Iraq, in Libya, more than 10 years in Egypt. I mean, the terrorist groups in Sinai were funded mainly by Qatar and backed by Turkey. Same goes for Yemen. So back to our cause, the Palestinian cause. Al Jazeera from the first day was promoting and talking about the Palestinian cause day and night. We have become Al Jazeera's horse to gain popularity in favor of the government or the state of Qatar that is an American colony, and to influence the Palestinian public opinion when needed, and to influence the Arab public opinion when needed. Again, Al Jazeera correspondents, Al Jazeera reporters, they are doing huge job, huge effort, and it's an honest effort. I'm talking about those who are making the policies of Al Jazeera, who are controlling Al Jazeera. And that's the state of Qatar. Now, I don't know whether you are familiar with or not that Qatar has funded the Palestinian division in 2007 and continued to fund this division until before the 7th of October, until before the 7th of October 2023. And Zionists many times have spoken that they are going to block Al Jazeera, but they never did. And they did that so many times before, and they never did, because it serves their interests one way or another. Again, one of the main key persons who have opened Al Jazeera, or who were guests of honor, was Shimon Peres. Even Netanyahu was invited to the headquarters of Al Jazeera. And this is, I'm not surprised of it. And Qatar has never sent one penny to support the Palestinian, whether PLO or the Palestinian Authority. Not one penny. At all. Because they have chose one side of the Palestinians, and they all the time they have been funding that side only. Not because they are in love with that side, that's Hamas. No, to maintain the Palestinian division, they have funded in the first place, and they have continued to fund until before the 7th of October. But not only that, Qatar has invited the top leaders of Hamas to Qatar. And listen to this. And here I'm not accusing the leaders of Hamas, but I'm talking about the general idea of how the game is played. Now, America is running this war against Palestinians, and that's very clear. Right? And Qatar has a very big presence inside Qatar, military and intelligence presence. And most of Hamas leaders, political leaders, are staying in Qatar. So if America wants to, for example, arrest Hamas leaders, it's a very easy thing to do. They are under their control. Right? That's common sense. But listen to this. Also, Qatar has invited the Taliban leadership over the past period, and has invited so many leaders that been accused of being terrorists by the Americans. But the Americans have opened the doors wide for the Qataris to invite the leaders of these groups. It was okay. Right or not? So Qatar is, one way or another, using its influence, is serving the American goals, short and long-term goals. Now that's why, for example, Qatar has become the key player in the negotiations, for example, between Hamas and Zionists with regard, for example, prisoners issue. Qatar is the key player. Why? Because it has Hamas leaders in Qatar. And it has a big influence over Hamas because it has been funding Hamas for long years with an American permission and a Zionist permission. Again, I'm not accusing Hamas. I'm talking about the Qatari policies that are controlled, directed by the Americans. So actually Americans has the strings of all what's happening in the area. And Qatar is the main puppet to run most of these strings. Qatar has contributed greatly and funded the division of Sudan country into two countries, North Sudan and South Sudan, and was trying to create another division inside the Sudani countries, and was trying to divide Egypt into many countries, and has funded all terrorist groups trying to create such division. But luckily they failed. And Qatar has made a very powerful alliance with Turkey. And Turkey, as I'm talking now, Turkey is selling the Zionist warplane fuel fuel in general, oil, comes from Jihan port, iron, for example, food, vegetables, fruits, everything until this moment is coming from Turkey. A part of the barking you hear from Erdogan all the time, that's nonsense. This is just bullshit. He's lying over and over again. Do not believe a word of what he's saying. So this is the story of Qatar and Al Jazeera. It's a very complex situation. But again, Qatar has funded the Palestinian division and maintained it until this very moment. Al Jazeera is playing a political role within the Arab world to divide and weaken sides over the other sides, one side over the other. But at the end of the day, it has to serve the American interests. At the same time, Qatar, using the American influence and its own money, to become a main player in the region, even it is very tiny, microscopic country, but has huge money and has the American support as well. So before we used to have Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Iraq, the biggest powers in the region. Now we have Iraq has been destroyed. So now we have Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Qatar, the main players in the Middle East. So I tried just to open your eyes about the role of Qatar, about the role of Al Jazeera, what shall I say? Again, I have to confirm again, Al Jazeera reporters, Al Jazeera correspondents, they are honest people trying to work for their own countries, but they are not making the policies of Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera is manipulating the information, enlarging them, using them in a way that could divide countries, could divide people over the others. It's all nonsense. At the end of the day, we are paying the price, double, triple, and you name it. And Al Jazeera broadcast in Arabic is very much different than its broadcast in English. I know in English they are promoting very well, that's good, but also they are not always telling the truth about what's happening here in Palestine. In Arabic, if you listen to the broadcast in Arabic, they try to make the Palestinian resistance in Gaza as a superpower, which is not true. At the end of the day, they are people under occupation. And their power is definitely not similar to the Zio power, military power. But in such way, they are giving huge excuse for the Zionists even to bomb more than usual. Because they are telling them that the Palestinians are as powerful as you in Gaza. So they are just providing excuses for Zionists to even bomb harsher than usual. And in so many cases, before 7th of October, Al Jazeera has invited some leaders who have been assassinated right after being invited by Al Jazeera, like a few days later. Top names. So I hope I succeeded to explain to you a little bit about Qatar and Al Jazeera. Again, Qatar is an American colony, literally. The American bases in Qatar are the biggest in the Middle East, and they have been used against many other Arab countries, such as Syria, Iraq, Libya, Yemen, you name it. This is the very, very simple, transparent truth about the Qatari role in the Arab world and here in Palestine. Yes, it's a CIA training base. Yes, yes, yes. Anyways, thank you very much, my friends. I'm glad to get in touch with you again. Please share, share, and share. Thank you. Let others know about Qatar and Al Jazeera role here in the Middle East and with regard to the Palestinian cause. Thank you.